Have you ever wanted to get away from everything and still be around people? Did you know there are cities and towns on this spinning rock so remote that 98% of the world's population has no idea these places even exist? We've done other videos and other channels have done videos on remote places, and some of them are known, like St. Helena in the South Atlantic, Iqaluit in Canada. There's a few other ones that are known and they're very remote. We're talking about ones that hardly anyone knows about. Sure, if you're watching this video from around one of those places I'm talking about, you know about it, but most of the population doesn't. I'd never heard of half of these before I did the research for this video, and I study geography daily. This video follows no real stat or theme other than they're way out in the middle of nowhere, away from any other human settlement bigger than, let's say, a small village. As you look at these towns on this list, you kind of got to wonder, why would people live here? It's one thing if you want to live off the grid, then you're out in the woods by yourself, and that's, understandable, but to be out in the middle of nowhere with a whole bunch of other people just seems kind of strange. As you watch this video, let me know how many you've heard of before in the comment section below. Also, if you know of any other places that should have been on this list, we'd love to hear about it again in the comment section. All right, this should be fun. Let's take a look. Number 7, PEDY, Australia, or as the locals call it, PEDY. This is a really interesting place. It is out in the middle of the outback in South Australia. If you want to get to PEDY from, let's say, Melbourne, you got to drive 17 hours northwest just to find the place. And for some odd reason, if you look at this, it's actually only an hour less to fly there. What kind of plane does this place have? Do they do crop dusting on the way to Melbourne or something like that? I think that's a mistake on Google Maps. I could be wrong. I don't know the background of that one, but there is another place called Adelaide, and if you want to go there, that's about a 9-hour drive. There is nothing out here. If you've ever driven through parts of North Dakota where it's just flat and you see nothing, Montana has a big stretch like that too. This is way worse. There is nothing out there. It's just flat in most parts for as far as the eye can see, and desertish. PEDY is a strange little place to live. They've got about 2,500 residents in this out-of-the-way desert town. Half of the residents live underground. Yeah, no kidding. They actually have over 100 homes dug into the bedrock in PEDY. The only reason PEDY is where it is and people live there is the opal mining. This is actually considered the opal mining capital of the world. I was watching one video where a guy said that he would go to school, come home, do his homework, have some dinner, and then his dad would tell the kids to grab a chisel and a hammer because they're building a new bedroom. They just start digging into the wall to make another bedroom. It's not just the homes. They actually have churches and shops underground. They have a bar underground, a couple other things. Number 6, FUNAFUTI Tuvalu. Now, if I pronounce that wrong, sorry. I'm not sure if anyone's gonna call me on it. Not many people live there, and only about 400 people visit this place a year. And most of those visitors are just reporters from around the world showing up to ask that age-old question. Why the hell do you people live here? 6,000 people call this entire atoll home. And the nearest place that has any sizable population is Fiji, almost 1,200 kilometers away. This place is so small, their main part of their atoll, their island, the airstrip they have runs almost the entire length of the main part of the city. That airstrip doubles as a soccer field, meeting place, and jogging track. Just like all of you, I've never been here, so I'm relying on what I've read, and a lot of people say the locals are wonderful if you're there to visit, but if you decide you're going to stay, don't expect to be accepted anytime soon. If you do decide to visit, I'd visit pretty soon because the place is sinking into the ocean. As the sea levels rise, this place will disappear. Let's say you are living there and you wanted to go to someplace bigger or you needed to get someplace, you're going to New Zealand or Hawaii. Number 5, YAKUTSK Russia. Yakutsk is in Siberia on the Lena River and is considered the coldest city in the world. There are colder places, but they say this is the actual coldest city. I remember a few other places claiming they're the coldest cities. Either way, the average temperature here in the winter is where Fahrenheit and Celsius meet at -40 degrees. There is only one resident per square mile on average in this region of Russia, and most live in this city. The region is divided into multiple administration centers the size of Arizona, and some of these sections only have 1 or 2 residents in the whole area. They have one road into the city from the south, and during the winter, I read that they closed down that road and they use the river instead because the river just freezes solid. There's some rivers in Alaska that do this too. I mean, we've all seen ice road truckers, but it's pretty bad when they actually close down the road and just decide to go with the river. If you've ever heard the old phrase, locked up in Siberia or something to do with Siberia, like they're going to send you to Siberia. Back in the old Soviet Union days, that's where they sent the hardest criminals, to Siberia. Well, this town hosted that prison that everyone talked about. I watched one girl's video. She went there. She's a Russian girl, and she went up there and she was kind of checking out the town. And she said the locals kept talking about the heat wave they were having. It was minus 30 degrees Celsius. While she was talking about it, her eyelashes had ice on them. If you want to drive and see your relatives in Moscow from here, you're talking about 112 hours of driving. And if you flew, it's about 6.5 hours. That's if it's the part of the season where a plane would actually leave or land here. Number 4, HANGA, Easter Island. Yeah, did you know Easter Island had a city? 90% of the people that live on Easter Island actually live in the city of HANGA. Easter Island is by itself. It's not like a bunch of little islands all around it. This island sits out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean by itself, almost 2,000 miles off the coast of Chile. Yeah, that far out. And if you're watching from someplace else, you don't understand miles, it's about 3,000 kilometers. HANGA sits between two volcanoes, which I'm sure raises the anxiety level of the 3,300 residents. When I hear that, it's like the town needs lifeboats like you have on a cruise ship. In case those two volcanoes decide to blow, you can just float out into the water and wait for help. It might take a while for that help to get there because, like I said, this island is about 3,000 kilometers off the coast of Chile. Number 3, LONGYEARBYEN Norway. The Norwegian town of LONGYEARBYEN is actually closer to the North Pole than it is the Norwegian capital of Oslo. It's on the island of Svalbard, and it is considered the world's most northern town. If you think Norway, Sweden, and Finland are pretty far north, this is past mainland Scandinavia at the edge of the Arctic Ocean. This town found an interesting way to cut down on crime. They actually made it illegal to live here without a permanent residence or a job. You have to have a job to work here, and as we all know, most employed people aren't out trying to do stupid stuff that's illegal. On top of that, they got a bunch of polar bears floating around, so, late night prowling's really not a thing here. You know what else is illegal? Dying. According to the BBC News, the town has outlawed dying. The ground is so hard here, it's next to impossible to bury someone. So if you get a terminal illness or something like that, they load you up on a boat or a plane and ship you south where you can be buried. This town has about 3,000 residents, oddly enough. And everyone has guns because of the polar bears we talked about earlier. The other problem with burying people here, if you can get them in the ground, they'll never decompose because it's like putting them in the ice box. LONGYEARBYEN is about a 3-hour flight from Oslo. I don't even know if you'd want to go here by sea. That's some rough ocean. Number 2, TORSHAVN, Faroe Islands. If you don't know where the Faroe Islands are, they're kind of between Norway and Iceland, north of Scotland. They're out there by themselves in the North Sea, and there's actually 18 islands that make up the Faroe Islands. The entire Faroe Islands only have 50,000 residents, with TORSHAVN being the capital, and they have the most of all those 50,000 with 14,000 residents, and a really cool flag for the city. Nothing like a giant arm jutting out of the water with a red hammer to let everyone know you mean business. Unlike most places on this list, this one is somewhat easy to get to. There's a lot of flights that go there from Edinburgh and Copenhagen and Oslo and Reykjavik. But if you want to take a boat to Copenhagen or Oslo, it's about 42 hours. But with only 50,000 residents in all these islands, it's scarcely populated. They have actually more sheep than people. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. We'd love it if you went over there and subscribed. Give some videos big thumbs up, just like you should do for this video. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, ADAK Alaska. ADAK was formerly known as ADAK Station, and it's a city that's located on ADAK Island in the Aleutian Islands, part of Alaska in case you don't know. ADAK is actually the United States' most western city. This town has a very interesting history. It started off as like a fishing village, and eventually in the 1700s, the Russians came here, turned it into a bigger fishing village, and then eventually they sold Alaska to the United States, and ADAK was part of that purchase, and the United States moved in. During World War II, a couple islands away, the Japanese had taken over the islands. This is the first time ever that American soil had been taken by another country during war. It's the only time. Well, the United States wasn't having it, so we wanted to send military there, and we had people landing in ADAK, and they went from just a couple hundred people to 6,000 in less than a month. They built an airstrip and bombed the Japanese on the other islands, and then eventually invaded from ADAK. After they chased the Japanese out and captured everyone, they decided they weren't leaving, and they built a legit military base with normal housing, a McDonald's, and everything. And it was there until the base closures of the 1990s. In just a couple months, ADAK went from 6,000 people to 300 people. In 2010, ADAK had 326 residents, and in 2020, they had 171. If you want to fly out of ADAK, it's a 5-hour and 40-minute flight to Anchorage. Actually, you have to stop at the Kenai Municipal Airport and then go to Anchorage from there. I was watching one video, and the Navy's kind of showed a little interest there in recent months, and a lot of it has to do with what's going on with Russia, they say. So we might be getting more people there. Maybe the military base will fire back up, and they'll actually have some new blood in ADAK. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day, and be nice to each other.